Is our second lesson and our last lesson for World War One. The next part is going to be your summative, where you're going to be doing some of your own individual research into the things that you would be interested in. Okay, so today we're going to talk about why Germany loses, what causes Germany to collapse, and why the war ends. Okay, so hopefully you have done the do now on Google Classroom. Question being, why might the entrance of the United States in World War I spell disaster for Germany? So hopefully you remember a little bit from the last lesson and from the video, and to help you answer that question. Okay, so our learning objective today is the second part, what finally caused the war to end. Okay, if you are doing the notes, you can get that out and add to them as we are going along, or do it at the end. Again, remember, I'm not looking at these. You don't need to share them with me or send them to me. It's just for your information and organization. Okay, so now that the United States has gotten involved in World War I, it becomes total war. Okay, all nations involved in the war devote all the resources they have left to the war effort. So governments take control of their economies to produce war goods, which means they take over companies and tell the companies what exactly that they need to make for the war. Most of the countries have to turn to rationing, which means limiting certain products at home for the citizens, usually food or certain things that may be very important to the war effort. So things like not being able to use rubber because they need rubber for weapons, or certain types of cloth for uniforms, things of that. But mostly it hits people having with food, okay, because they want most of the food to be going to their troops. Okay, propaganda goes pretty much crazy. You see propaganda on all sides. Remember, propaganda is one-sided information. It's designed to increase and build the morale of the citizens, okay, and to boost support for the war. Also at this time, because we have so many men fighting, women for the first time are leaving home and going out into the workforce. Okay, and they're taking over previously male-dominated jobs, and a lot of them become nurses. But a lot of them work in factories, making weapons, making bullets, ammunition, uniforms. So this is the first time that actually women are getting a little bit of independence, and they're earning their own paycheck. Unfortunately, that doesn't last, because once the war is over, the men come back and they want those jobs back. But we'll see this again. It happens in World War II, where women leave the home.
Let me stand at your side.
Okay. Another big thing that happens is, so the same year that the U.S. gets involved, there is a revolution in Russia, and that forces Russia out of the war. Okay, and you can see by the map here, this shows, whoops, let's go back. This shows what areas Russia gets divided into. So you can see here that this was where the Eastern Front was. Okay, and there is a civil war between the Bolsheviks, which is the Red Army, and the anti-Bolsheviks, okay, which is the White Army. This is all area that was lost by Russia during the war. And we're going to talk about part of this is because of a treaty they have to sign with Germany to get out of the war, which we're going to look at right now. Okay, so this Russian Revolution basically reduces the power in the East. And this is also why it's really, really important for the U.S. to be involved. Most people in Russia wanted out of the war because they were facing really high casualties. Um, the leader of Russia at this time was Tsar Nicholas II. He was not a particularly good leader. He also wanted total control over what the military was doing, but he wasn't a very good military commander. Okay. So Russia was facing casualties of 5.5 million people. Now, casualties doesn't just mean deaths, that means injuries as well. Okay. So the Bolsheviks, who are being led by Vladimir Lenin, revolt against the Tsar. And they forcefully removed the Tsar from power and they imprisoned him with his family. Eventually, the Tsar and his entire family are shot and brutally killed in 1918. Okay, Vladimir Lenin now becomes the leader. He seizes power. Now, in order for him to maintain power, and because the war is so unpopular, he has to find a way to get out of the war. Okay, so he sends his right hand man, whose name is Leon Trotsky, to negotiate with Germany. And Russia withdraws from the war with a treaty. It's called the Treaty of Brest-Litovsk. Okay, this treaty is actually really harsh towards the Russians, and this will not be forgotten when Germany eventually loses and they face their own very rough treaty. That's pretty harsh, and a part of that is because of how harshly they treated Russia. So basically, what this treaty does is it gives land to Germany. And the land that it gives is actually really good, fertile land for farming. So it was a massive loss to Russia. It also allows the countries of Poland, Ukraine, Latvia, Lithuania, Finland, and Estonia to become independent. Okay, and then this is the start of the Russian Civil War between the communists, which are led by Lenin and Trotsky, who's a really, really good military commander, which is known as the Red Army, and the people that want the Tsar back in power, the Royalists, which is the White Army. Okay. Okay, so since now Germany does not have to fight on that eastern side, it moves all of its forces to the Western Front, okay, which is going to make things a bit more difficult for the Allied powers because now here are a bunch of soldiers that were previously in a different area. And you can see various photographs here of the war. Okay, so even though this happens, the Central Powers start to collapse. Okay, Germany turns all of its forces onto the Western Front. However, the German army is in a pretty weak point right now. They're pretty much running out of men. They're running out of supplies because of that naval blockade, and they can no longer trade with the United States. And things are not looking good for Germany. Okay, there's a second Battle of the Marne. There was a first one. This was in July of 1918. It is the last major German offensive to try to get control, and they lose. Okay, American and French troops counterattack, but the Germans continue to try to push towards Paris, but they're very much weakened. And that's because there are a lot more troops now for the Allies. Just there was 140,000 U.S. troops there to counterattack the German push. Okay, and then in July of 1918, Americans send 2 million more American soldiers into battle, and that really kind of spells the end for Germany. Okay, so the Central Powers begin to crumble. First, the Bulgarians surrender, then the Ottoman Turks surrender. Okay, In October of 1918, the Russian Revolution ends. The Austrian-Hungarian Empire falls apart. The German troops, knowing that they are losing and they are dying and getting injured for no reason, start to leave. They desert. They desert their commanders. They desert their troops and their stations. Okay, and this basically forces Kaiser Wilhelm, the leader of Germany, to step down. And armistice, which means a stop of fighting, is declared at 11 a.m. November 11th, 1918. Okay, then you're going to watch the Ed puzzle on the armistice at the end of World War I. Okay, now a little bit more information that isn't covered here, but may be something that you are interested in. Is we're going to talk a little bit about the Treaty of Versailles, but we are going to first look at the legacy that was left by the war. Okay, so you can see the state does not belong to one man, but all. Let us together rebuild this world that we may share in the days of peace. Okay, so the legacy of war. At the end of the war, 8.5 million soldiers are dead. Okay, 21 million are wounded. European economies are destroyed. National treasures have been destroyed, stolen, depleted. Millions of acres of land, villages, farms, homes are destroyed, and some of that area is not able to grow crops for quite a while. The German defeat causes a bit of a revolution, and the German defeat is actually what then and the Treaty of Versailles is what actually starts this idea of revenge that later turns into World War II. Survivors of the war suffer from disillusionment and despair. Now, a lot of this is because on the German side, the German people were never told what poor shape the German army was in at the end of the war. So they thought that things were still okay, but now they're having to sign a treaty that basically is really, really harsh. And they don't understand why they have to sign that. I mean, they think that they can go right back into war and they could possibly win because the government had never really been clear with the civilians as to the situation that they were truly in. Okay?
Tonight, we remember those who gave their blood to defend this country. Hail the victorious dead!
Okay, and even today, if you go to Europe in certain areas, especially in France, you can see the devastation that was left from the war. You can see where the trenches were. You can visit some of the trenches. Okay, and if you're interested in what happens at the end of the war, again, one of the topics for your summative is to look at the Treaty of Versailles and look at how Europe changes after the war. Because now that the German Empire has been defeated, the Austrian Empire has been defeated, and the Ottoman Empire has been defeated, they are broken up into new countries. Okay, and so the map looks quite a bit different from what it did in 1914 from what it does in 1918 and 1919 once the treaties had been signed. Okay. So your assignment then, which is due for the next class, is to complete this worksheet on the end of World War I. Okay, it looks at various factors of what happened, looks at how quickly things were being made in the factories, and things of that sort. And then that's not due until the next class. And then for your exit ticket, I would like you to answer this question on Google Classroom. Why do you think World War I was called the war to end all wars? Okay. And that's it. So for our next class, we'll be live so that we can discuss the summative and what you need to do. So like we've been saying before, the summative is based primarily like the one you did in English. So it's going to follow a lot of the same format. So it shouldn't seem too different for you. Okay, so if you wind up having any questions about this lesson or about the worksheets or anything, let me know. Send me an email, send me a message, or if your teacher is Mr. Truska, send him an email or a message, and we'll be happy to discuss it with you some more. Okay, have a good day. Bye.